I just want to say something. Because a striking moment of the tribunal was when Jeff Halper was talking about house demolition, and we had screens where Jeff was showing pictures of house demolitions. And you might see right behind the speaker in the District 6 Museum, we had a huge picture of house demolition under apartheid, and it was pretty much exactly the same picture. So that was my comment before we start with Q&A.
Great resonance. Okay, so I'm going to take a handful of questions, 2, 3, 4. If people can keep the comments or questions relatively short, that means we can get more in. We can either have one question lasting 45 minutes or lots and lots and lots with rather shorter time. And I think we've got the mic coming to you, so.
No. And so my question is really related to that. Firstly, obviously Veolia is a good target, but how do we go about choosing the best targets in terms of corporate complicity? And secondly, as a related question, when we have chosen those targets, what's the most effective way of going about challenging them? And this is related to the fact that today I've been writing a letter to MPs, and I won't go on too much, but some of those MPs I know and the councillors are involved in groups like Biocom, have visited Israel, and therefore how do we get our voice across, not just relying on our councillors who are often part of the complicity themselves? Thank you.
Brilliant question, thank you.
With regards to the previous session at the tribunal related to the book that you invite corporations, have you invited representatives from the PA or from Hamas to participate? And what has been their response, or do you know what their opinions are on this whole process?
Thanks very much again. Over in the front row.
One idea I had with my comrades in Poland was around occupying building sites of companies that are complicit and actively building illegal settlements inside Palestinian territory, because we have a big building in Warsaw that's actually being built at the moment by a company that built a settlement in East Jerusalem, which I've forgotten. But this kind of information I think is really useful, and you do get a lot of these construction companies around the world, and especially in America, building shopping malls, building housing estates, and I think it would be a really powerful message on one particular day, maybe Palestinian Land Day, and maybe that's too far away, maybe something sooner, but to get people in and to shut these building sites down in coordinated action that would really put the spotlight on something that's an international consensus. I mean, okay, we know occupation, colonization goes way beyond just the settlements, but it's something that's really clear and easy for people to understand, and kind of uses the idea and the sort of motion of the Occupy movement at the moment to kind of take space and make it collective and make it kind of a direct action, and maybe hold it for a long time, maybe have like people's forums in there. This is my idea I am sharing.
Thank you very much.
I'll start with this one. So Michael, you were asking, just to be clear, if we spoke to the PA and Hamas and about the process, about the tribunal, and what they think of it. We didn't, because we wanted to stay sort of apolitical and not related to one party or another, and we call ourselves, a people's tribunal, so we didn't want to have to ask Hamas or Fatah or the PA what they were thinking of the tribunal, because we didn't want them to try to take over in any way. Fatah and the PA is sort of involved in the tribunal because Leila Shahid, who is the PA delegate of Belgium, Luxembourg, and maybe the Netherlands, anyway, PA delegate in Europe, is involved in the tribunal and was one of the persons who actually called for the tribunal to happen. We've always refused to take sort of any orders or even any advice from the PA or any political party, and I mean the PA is trying to comment on the list of speakers, etc. I won't mention names or mention speakers, but saying, this speaker is for one state solution, you should add in the tribunal. That happened to us. But we've always said, look, this is not your tribunal. We hope it's going to help you as a Palestinian, but we're not accepting any orders from you. Yeah, so Hamas, we never really heard any comment coming from them, and the PA, at best, they they said it's okay, but they never, they never did any, they never used our filing, they never helped us. One important point, the tribunal in Vietnam in 65, 66, 67, the Vietnamese government partly funded the tribunal because they thought it was a very important tool. The PA, I think, gave us like 3,000 euros ages ago, so they're not really helping much. Right? Better, things for the best.
So one of the questions was about choosing targets. I could say from the BNC perspective, we follow a context sensitivity approach, which means that the activists on the ground are the ones who know best what targets to be choosing. And it varies from one place to the other. In some places, going after produce corporations makes sense. In other places, going after your councillor, if councillors are movable, that makes sense. From my own BDS activism, I think the best campaigns have been ones that can involve a lot of people and work at different levels at the same time. So instead of one that's only activists sitting outside supermarkets or doing direct action, but one that can involve people at different layers. So you do the direct action, but you're able to speak to the councillors and do the lobbying. So multi-entry campaigns have been really good, and the most successful ones from the experiences that we have had.
Yeah, I've got to sort of follow up onto that. I totally agree with what Rafif said, and I think more important than the specific targets are the principles behind it. And like Rafif said, it's context sensitive. It depends very much what you think in your local community or in a particular country will have the most effect and can have the widest sort of support. But I think the principles of the 2005 Palestinian Civil Society call for BDS that Rafif listed are really what should inform whichever targets we focus on. Those should be really backing them up. It should be based on those three principles, because otherwise it needs to be focused. I think that there can be a tendency of, as I mentioned, sort of list ticking and almost, I don't want to be too critical of people, but it can be kind of danger of everything possibly related to Israel, and you're getting into a long list of purity tests, which it spreads everything too thin, sort of thing. So I think the things that you're involved with Viola are an excellent example of a very targeted campaign. And Viola has good sort of local resonance as well, because it's basically your bin men, It's the corporations that bin men that employ bin men. So it's got that, I think in my local area you see the Viola logo, and every time I see it, I've got to do something about that. So it's I think content sensitive and based on the principles is the key.
And also I think I'm going to, as chair, throw in my little lot on this as well. For 1 minute. The reason that we, I think, first identified Caterpillar as a really important target was not just because of the obvious high street thing, although that's really important in terms of the creativity. One of the things that people did when more and more brought out a dedicated little pamphlet on Caterpillar. People would go into some of the shops which are stocking Caterpillar boots, as if they were going to buy them, put on a pair of the boots, and then take out the report from their bag and start reading it to the shop. At which point, of course, the shopkeepers thought, well, actually, we'd like to get them out, but they're wearing £100 of Caterpillar's boots, which they haven't paid for yet, so we can't necessarily get them out. And that type of creativity, which was nothing to do with us at all, but just actually reaching out to people who had their own ideas of it, was one side of it. The other was to look at the divestment side, not just the boycott and the street sort of level resistance, but to look at the fact that the Church of England had its £2.2 million of investments in Caterpillar. So we went again and again to the General Synod, which is the democratic body which underpins the Church, did lots of presentations, sent the reports to the Ethical Investment Advisory Group, which gives them the advice on investments. And after 2 years of doing that, the Synod said, yeah, actually this is not the sort of company that the Church should be investing in. And the next year, the Church disinvested. They pulled out the £2.2 million And then that sent a spiral going so you had other churches beginning to say, well, why are we doing this then? If the Church of England, which is not exactly the most radical organisation in the world, if they can do it, why shouldn't we be doing it? And I think that, again, it's just using those type of specific focuses. The most recent one we've tried to do is on BT, getting people to ring BT and asking why it is that Bazik International, the firm which rolls out telecommunications infrastructure to the settlement, so again it's absolutely integral to the infrastructure of the occupation, why it's been given these special privileges of being one of the members of the new BT International family. And okay, it hasn't exactly stopped it happening, but it's certainly put that right on the agenda of Ian Livingston, the BT chief executive, who's now talking about it openly and saying it's a real problem. So I think it's about, trying to match up where the specific things can be and where it's going to make most importance to people. For Elbit or something like that, not many of us go and buy drones very often, and so it's you can't really boycott a drone. So it's like those of us who are vegetarians boycotting McDonald's. It's very easy. It doesn't really make such a sort of big thing. But you can then look in, obviously, to the sanctions side. And that's where we've called for the sanctions to come in, particularly on a two-way arms embargo with Israel. And again, following Operation Cast, 5 of the licenses were withdrawn. Not everything, but a start. And I think every time there's one of these additional accretions to the mass of actions and the mass of successes, that's when it really begins to hit home.
I've got a follow-up comment. I think also what's very important about boycott, divestment and sanction movement is the education part of it. People say, boycott, divestment, sanction is refusing a dialogue. It's completely the opposite. I'll give you two brief examples. My local fruit seller, just a very small shop, the owner is a very nice Indian guy. And I found out last time that he was selling avocados and parsley from Israel. So I spoke to him and said, look, you shouldn't have those products in your store, etc. And we started from the point that he said, where are you from? So I'm French. He said, oh, but where is Palestine? And I said, oh, you know Israel, Palestine. And he said, but is he near France? So, we started from this level of discussion, and then, so we spoke for about 5 minutes, etc. I tried to bring it. I think it's also, you have to remember that it depends who you're talking to, it depends who your audience is. I think with some people, just don't talk about the Nakba, don't talk about, take settlements that they understand, they've heard about in the news. So I started from a very basic point, the law. I said, look, Israel is breaking the law, and those products are probably from an illegal settlement, so you shouldn't buy them. It's just, you're following the law, you think it's the law in England, And then he told me, your customer, it's important. Sorry, I'm being like Orientalist doing an Indian accent, it's not an Indian accent, sorry. Anyway, he said, you shouldn't, you're right, we need to follow the law, and I promise it's the last time, I'm not sure if he's going to do it, but anyway, it's the last time I'm going to buy those products. So, educating people. And the second example is that, was a bit of a funny, odd example, is that the District 6 Museum security is by G4S. So when we, enter, and there's a big sign, there's the main entrance, and then a big sign, G4S, and we thought, what a shame. So anyway, we spoke to them, because, no one, we have to remember that we're not always talking to our 10 activist friends about boycott and Nakba and UN Resolution 194. We talk to people that don't know what G4S does. So we spoke to them and stuff, and then they sort of hit the thing with a placard and say, we'll look into this. And so I think that's part of the BDS as well. It's educating people, educating your parents, your friends, your nice Indian shop, fruit seller, and everyone else. That's it.
And in terms of education, for those of you who don't know, I assume everyone knows, but G4S is doing the security for the Olympics that are coming to London.
I was just about to say exactly that, so that's a really good opportunity, and I think that links with the whole occupation of building sites and other things like that, and taking direct action on that as well.